Welcome to Absolute Alignment with Christy L. Biga, when success feels easy, on TransformationTalkRadio.com. And now your host, Christy L. Biga.
Hi everyone, welcome for this new episode of Absolute Alignment with Crystal, when success feels easy. It's always a pleasure for me to be here with you every first and third Friday at 1:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time for a new episode with a guest, of course, that will come on to share with you amazing information that will help you on your journey. Today, it's all about emotional healing. And before we go there, I just want to thank you again for watching this and also thank our special VIP guests that are in the studio right now with us. And you can also be a part of it. You can be with us while we are recording the episode, and afterwards get a chance to ask your questions and get live coaching from me and from the guests. So for you to do that, just use the link in the description of this show to save your spot. I'll be so happy to have you here. So as I was saying, today's episode is all about emotional healing. Our guest will come on the second part to give us great tips on that. But before she does, I just want to take a time for us to acknowledge that emotions are something we are really not taught how to deal with. We don't know what to do with our emotions because some way, somehow, they make us feel like it's wrong to have emotions. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's like a weakness to express your emotions. And they even have a word for that. Don't be a P if you want to cry. I'm not going to use the word here, but you know what I'm saying. If you cry, don't be a P, right? So people don't know what to do with their emotions. The problem is we all have emotions. And there is a reason why we have them. There's no reason to be ashamed. And it's more difficult to manage painful emotions. So the best way that we tend to deal with painful emotions is for us to keep them as a lesson. We want to hold on to them. We walk around with them like a badge of honor. We carry our pain through our lives. You know, we walk around with all the wounds that we have had from childhood to adulthood. We have those wounds. Somebody disappointed us, we carry that pain. We don't let it go because we want to remember. We don't want to forget. It's like we need that pain to protect ourselves from having the same pain. So our brain comes to that place where it creates a story. Our subconscious mind creates a story. And we have those triggers. Every time someone else shows up, let's say, you know, your father, when you were a little girl or a little boy, your father promised you something and he didn't. You were hurt. You were disappointed. You were wounded. So now you carry a story of you can't trust people. They make promises they can't keep. And you grow up with that story within you. You need that pain. You need to remember over and over again that your father or whoever in your life promised you something you didn't do, did it, and it hurt you. And you don't want that to happen again. So you need that story. You need that pain. You hold on to it. And you want to sometimes share the story over and over again. It's like a badge of honor. Or you don't know what I have been through. Or you don't know what people have done to me in the past. Or you don't know how terrible this type of people are. It becomes our badge of honor. We have suffered. We have been wounded. We have had all these traumatic experiences. So we don't want to let it go. It's like we need it to validate ourselves. We need it. But the problem here is that as long as we hold on to those emotions, as long as we hold on to that pain, as long as we hold on to those wounds, we don't want them to heal. It affects all the areas of our lives. Now our relationships are impacted because we can't trust people anymore. We can't trust men or women because of a past experience. So that wound being there, our relationships are affected because now we can't trust anymore. We have a trust issue. We expect people to disappoint us just for us to have a chance to say, I knew it. I knew what's going to happen. People always do this to me. This is always what this type of people do. So that's one of the reasons why we keep the pain. We don't want to let it go. We don't want to release it because we need it to remind ourselves that it's not okay to trust people. It's not okay to make decisions because maybe somewhere in the past you made a decision and it didn't work out the way you wanted. So you keep the pain, you keep the frustration, you keep the wound within yourself. And every time you want to make a decision again, maybe to say yes to an opportunity or, start something new, that pain is there. And it keeps you safe because it's going to remind you, hey, don't do that. Remember last time you make a decision, what happened? It was so painful. So don't do that again. So I don't know if you see how walking around with the pain, walking around with the wounds open affects your life. Because now you are not making decisions from a place of power, but you are making decisions from a wounded place. You look at people, you go into relationships with the wounds, and you watch out. You are careful. You look at what is happening because the pain is so still there. You don't want to let it go, and you feel like it keeps you safe because now you have all those red flags. If people do this, red flag. If this happens, red flag. You have all those red flags, and you believe it keeps you safe. But is it really keeping you safe, or is it just preventing you from experiencing life to the fullest? That's the question here. Because if you can't trust people anymore, if you can't make decisions anymore, if you can't do anything anymore without being afraid of the pain, are you really in power here? Or are you simply missing out on the opportunity to live your life to the fullest, to experience beautiful, amazing relationships based on trust, to make decisions that will take your life, your business to the next level, to take opportunities that are showing up, but that you miss out on because you are so afraid of the pain that is still there, because the wound is still open. It still hurts. How about letting that go? I know it seems crazy because sometimes, but you don't know what happened to me. You can't even imagine. Maybe right now you're having that conversation. Maybe thinking, Crystal, you don't know what you're talking about. I can't let that go. That's just not possible. You have no idea. Maybe I don't. You're right. Probably don't know what you have been through. Probably don't know what people have done to you. I have no clue. But I know one thing. As long as you will carry that story with you, as long as that pain will be there, it will just hold you back. It will just hinder your light. It will just keep you away from your full potential. That's all why I'm offering the opportunity today for you to think about it. And just look at those two pictures. Is the pen, that badge of honor you're holding so proudly and saying, you don't know what I have been through? Let me tell you the story. That story, is that story helping you? Or is it time maybe to let it go and start from scratch and start fresh? Heal the wound. It takes sometimes courage to look at the wound and let it and heal. Letting go takes courage. Starting to heal, the healing process takes courage. And I invite you to start the journey today. That's why I have with me on the show today this amazing guest. She's a lovely being. She's my friend. We met not long ago, but, she's really close to my heart. And I know she's going to share with you really a powerful tool that you can start using today on your healing journey. She will be talking on how to heal your pain through writing. So I want to invite right now my guest and friend, Ellie Shoja. Hi, Ellie.
Crystal, I can literally listen to you like all day long. Everything you say, there's so much wisdom in your words. There's so much love in your heart. I know you share from this place of just wanting to uplift the world, and it's so incredibly beautiful what you're doing. I'm so grateful to be here with you. I really appreciate the invite, and I hope that I can be of service to your audience and share what I know.
So, thank you, Ellie, for being here. Thank you so much. So just introduce yourself to the people that don't know you, and let's get into it.
Sure thing. So my name is Ellie Shoja. I'm an author. I run a mindfulness company called Peace Unleashed. And I had a lot of those stories that you're talking about. You said some really amazing thing. We expect people to disappoint us. And absolutely, that was the story of my life. I was so wounded and hurt that I expected the world to be against me, and it was, because the world responds to your expectation of it, right? So I grew up, my dad was an international con man. I moved from country to country. I changed my identity multiple times, and I moved probably 30 times before the age of 15. When I was 12, we actually had to run away from my dad. Actually, before I was 12, we had to run away from my dad to get away from that life. So my mom, my sister, and I, we literally bolted and left the country. We were in Germany at the time. We had previously lived in refugee camps in Germany, and it was very tumultuous, and the effects of it on me were not the best, because when you're a kid and your parents are misbehaving and they're behaving and acting out of their pain and whatever they think is the right thing, and maybe it's not the right thing because they're wounded beings, right? And they wound others along the way because of that. But when you're a kid, you don't have clarity in your visions, and you internalize it. So I thought, all of this around me is happening, my suffering's happening because there's something deeply wrong with me. I am unlovable. I am unworthy. I don't deserve to be alive. I had severe nervous tics. By the time I was 12, I had anger issues. I had suicidal ideation. I decided there is no God, because a God that would allow children to suffer as I had could not exist. So we had a major falling out. And that continued into my teens and into my mid-20s. And I was in just so much internal turmoil that it was very hard for me to make any meaningful relationships. I mean, imagine moving one time from the age of 9 to 12, right? It's a very pivotal kind of a age. Imagine moving one time and letting go of all of your relationships and friendships and all of that stuff. We moved 30 times before I was 15. So I didn't even know how to maintain relationships. I had to learn all of that. And of course, I felt like it was my fault. There was something wrong with me. I was the problem here. And all of these stories that you're alluding to, that you're talking about, and these stories that I had to one by one basically shed from myself, let go, release. And it does take courage, as you said, to let go. It does take willingness, and it does take that decision to want a better life, to be able to let go of the stories, of the beliefs, of the agreements you've made with yourself that are not serving you. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. So, I didn't get to the today part. So today, the reason I can come and talk to you about my past without being in tears, without, breaking down emotionally, is because my past is a story now. My past is just, there's no emotional attachment to it anymore, because my past doesn't say anything about who I am, my worthiness, my lovability, my abilities in life. It doesn't say anything about me. It just says that certain events happened in my past. It's like I went to the grocery store one time. It's an event.
Yes.
My dad was a con man and we lived in refugee camps. It's an event. So it's the same kind of an emotional, no emotional attachment to it. And now that I have been able to get to this place, I feel incredible peace. I just have so much groundedness. I know who I am. I know that my emotions are not my identity. My thoughts are not my identity. The stories I used to tell about myself are not my identity. The stories I tell about myself today are not my identity, right? These have nothing to do with who I am. So then what am I? What are you? If you are not your thoughts, your stories, your background, your emotions, the things you said, the things you did, then what are you? What are you, right? So that's a fascinating question. And the answer is that you are that infinite being, that energy that experiences these things, experiences thoughts, experiences emotions, experiences actions, experiences relationships, right? None of those things, all of those things are up here. The being that experiences it so much greater, so much grander, and it is that consciousness, right? But then what does that mean? If I am the consciousness, if I am the being, the infinite kind of energy that is having this experience of living through these events, having these emotions, having these thoughts. So what does that mean? That means that I can choose to think different thoughts. I can choose to feel different emotions. I can choose to say different words. I can choose to participate in different actions and relationships if the ones I'm participating in are not serving me, are not making me feel good about myself.
That's so powerful. And I want to ask you, because you shared before and after and now, and I want just to know, what was the moment? Was there any defining moment where you knew, okay, this is not working, this is not helping me, these stories are not serving me? What was that moment? And when that moment happened and we knew something had to change, how were you able to make it work? What did you use? What is the tool? What has helped you to be where you are today?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think there were many moments, and they were the moment that I needed to experience in that moment, right? It was like the next step. One of the biggest ones for me was I was in my mid-20s, I was like 24, and I met my ex-husband, and he had the opposite life that I had. So he grew up in his parents' dream house with a 270-degree ocean view. Like they each had their own rooms, master bedrooms. Like I shared a room with my family of 4. It's I grew up very, very opposite of affluent, right? And it's like, what do you mean you had your room? And that was like the least of my issues, right? So I meet this guy, and his family didn't fight. They spent every holiday together. They were just these happy, wonderful people, the kind of people that you see on sitcoms, like spending. They would go and have a white Christmas in their second home in Idaho. Like it was just like these amazing things. His parents would kiss each other on the stairs as they were passing each other. And one night I asked them, I said, this was very early on in us dating. I said, hey, so what do your parents do when they fight? And he's like, my parents don't fight. I'm like, okay, so maybe you don't see them fight, but as you were growing up and they would have fights, would they like go in their room and close the doors, like, so you wouldn't know? It's like, Ellie, my parents don't fight. I'm like, okay, I know you think they don't fight, but they must fight, right? So what do they do? Do they does your mom ever throw stuff? What happens? Do they ever scream? Do you ever get sent out of the house, so that you don't hear stuff? Because, and he just, it wouldn't compute for me, and it wouldn't compute for him. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. They don't fight. They don't fight. They get along. I'm like, it doesn't make sense. How does that work, right? So then that threw me into this like 3 weeks of crying. So I basically literally cried for 3 weeks, and I had an existential crisis because this life that I thought only existed on television, somebody had lived it. This was reality for someone. And after my 3 weeks of feeling sorry for myself, I had this moment of incredible clarity. I said, you know what? Maybe I didn't choose the childhood I had. By the way, I know differently now. I know I chose my childhood, but at the time I thought maybe I didn't choose the childhood I had, but I'm going to choose my adulthood. I want a different life. And if this life exists where people just get along and they don't fight and there's nothing being thrown at each other and nobody threatens to throw themselves off the balcony and you don't get sent down the street to get ice cream so that your parents can fight and then you can still hear them down the road. Like, if this life exists, I want it. I want that life. I want to be in a place where I feel so at peace that I can, like, I'm happy all the time. And the most amazing thing is when you have clarity about what you want, all of life conspires to put in your path all of the pieces, all the teachers, all the messages that you need in order to get there.
Mm. And I know you use writing. So how do you use writing? I know you have a book. And how can people watching this and our VIP guests in the live studio audience, how can they personally use writing to create after they have clarity on the life they want, outside of pain? How can they create that using writing?
Yeah. Writing is such an interesting thing because when you write by hand, you're making these squiggles, these drawings essentially with your hand. You actually activate the right side of your brain, which is the side for creativity, the part of your brain that houses that connection to the present moment, to the divinity within yourself. What happens is when we are in traumatic situations, we get into our heads. And what I mean by that is we start thinking and analyzing and trying to understand and make sense of what's happening to us, right? So we go into that left hemisphere where we are judging, defining, explaining, trying to make sense of what is happening based on the past and projecting where we are emotionally into the future. So very non-creative space, not conducive with the present here and now, not conducive with feeling at peace because you are in a very critical frame of mind. And a lot of times we kind of turn that criticalness towards ourselves and we start judging ourselves and feeling really bad and terrible about ourselves. So now when you start writing down all of these terrible things that are happening, right, by hand, you start coming into the present moment, you start activating the right side of your brain, you start softening those events up, and you start getting emotionally into a place where you can actually release the trauma and the pain and the emotion from it. Mm-hmm. And that neutralizes that momentum of the negative emotions. And so then you can start guiding yourself into a more positive place. So you can then go from this terrible thing happened to me, blah, 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 to how else can I look at this situation? What would it take for me to feel better in this situation? And because the creative mind is activated, you actually start thinking about solutions in a more productive way, because now the negative emotions are neutralized and you're able to activate the positive, problem solving abilities of your brain. And then you find solutions that help elevate you emotionally.
Wow. So yeah, definitely. It seems like when you write it, mm-hmm. you have it in front of you. And the funny mm-hmm. thing is that when I usually do journaling, mm-hmm. after you write it down, all the terrible things, you look at them and they don't look that terrible anymore.
Yeah.
But when they were still in your head, it seemed like that was the end of the world. But once you write them down, you look at this paper, and at some point you realize that, Okay, it wasn't the end of the world, right?
Uh,
Sometimes it's even funny, the crazy things that come out. But yeah, so that's really powerful. And you have a book you want to give us, maybe any one one thing that you shared in the book that can help our listeners, maybe if they want to go check out the book, and anywhere else they can, contact you if they want to continue the conversation. And of course, our VIP guests in the live studio audience have the chance after this to ask you all questions and get support from you. But for anyone listening that is not in the studio right now, can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. And I think if your audience is in a place of constriction, I have a deck of cards called Your Heart Knows the Way. And I think this really would help. I wanted to create a deck of cards that really helps people find that place of peace within themselves and open up the heart space, because that's the center of our creativity and connection to that divinity within us. My second book is actually a novel. So if you want a book that is a spiritual book disguised as a science fiction novel, this is the way to go. It's called The 13th Planet. It's a really fun and fast read.
Thank you so much, Ellie. It was amazing to have you here. Thank you to all our listeners and viewers. And again, you can always be with us in this studio, be a part of the conversation. To do that, just use the link in the description. We are always here on Friday, first and third Friday of the month, 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. If you're anything like me, you want to put that on your calendar, because if it's not on my calendar, it's not happening.
That's right.
So thank you, Ellie, and thank you all of you guys. For whoever is in the live studio audience right now, stay right there. We are going to go to the Q&A and coaching session. Mm-hmm. See you on the next episode. Bye-bye.
The views expressed on this program are those of the host, guests, and callers, and do not necessarily reflect the views of the station, its management, or advertisers. You're listening to Transformation Talk Radio.